All right, toxic relationships and why we get in them and how we can get ourselves out of them. Welcome. My name is Charlotte Alea. So, just about everybody I know has at some point in their lives found themselves embroiled and sucked into a toxic relationship. So, toxic relationship, several components. Feels completely out of control. Feels completely out of control. You're drinking the poison. It tastes so good. You know it's awful for you, and somehow you just can't stop. Toxic relationships, doing things that you feel really bad about, maybe even ashamed of, or acting in ways that just you don't really even feel like are you. And you feel, again, out of control, not sure why you're doing it, not sure why you're going along with it. Number 3, in toxic relationships, getting yourself really hurt, really hurt in this relationship, and yet still don't really feel like you can leave. And I want to make a distinction here. When I'm talking about toxic relationships, I'm talking about emotionally toxic. I'm not talking about physically or sexually abusive. Just want to draw that line because that is a whole different conversation, okay? So, the reason why just about all of us at some point in our lives, sometimes when we're teenagers, if we're lucky, sometimes young adulthood, but oftentimes also later in our life, midlife, after a marriage, maybe because of a marriage not working out, we find ourselves in a toxic relationship and it's like out of the blue and we're like, how did I get myself in this? It just feels like there's some force that's greater than you sucking you in. And the reason why, this is the short of it, the reason why this happens is that basically just about all of us did not have perfect childhoods. In fact, I have not met anyone so far that had a perfect childhood. So what that means is when we don't have a perfect childhood, there's some moments when we're children that we are hurt and wounded and where we do not learn how to grow into proper adults, where we missed a piece of development, key development, emotional development. And that piece of us, because we were hurt and wounded, gets buried. We send it back into our unconscious. The unconscious is the part of us that remains out of our conscious awareness, and it's a big part of us, actually. So we send that piece of us deep inside of us. But guess what? Eventually, sometime in adulthood, and it's a different time for all of us, that wound gets exposed. It comes to the surface because it's ready to be healed. Hello, I'm ready to be healed now, except that we don't know that's what's happening. So what this looks like is twofold, okay? And why this happens, why we end up in that toxic pattern that is actually repeating a pattern from early childhood or sometime in childhood beyond our memory, is because it looks as if, first of all, in these toxic relationships, like we are purposely trying to hurt ourselves, right? Why am I hurting myself? Why am I doing these things? And the key thing to understand is that we're not actually trying to hurt ourselves. What we're trying to do in toxic relationships is we're trying to heal ourselves. I know that sounds crazy because it's the opposite. We are hurting ourselves, but we are actually trying to heal ourselves. And the way that works is because it's our inner child. It's that part of us that was wounded, that is acting out and trying to find the same situations to get a different outcome, to essentially undo the wound and heal it. Okay, so it's repeating the same pattern, it's repeating the same type of event that wounded them, hoping for a different outcome, but then getting the same outcome because that system doesn't work, and getting hurt again. And that's when we end up in this great emotional turmoil where we're just feeling so hurt, we're feeling so pulled into the relationship because we desire to heal, and then we get so hurt by it. So that's number 1, why we end up in toxic relationships. But there's a second reason as well, and that has to do with our dark sides, okay? So we all have a dark side. This is the part of us that craves chaos and destruction. Yes, all of us have this part of ourselves. And that part of us awakens in these toxic relationships and is like, oh, it's so bad, it's good. It's so bad, it's good. This is a part of you that awakens and is often so turned on, that's so sexually awakened and just wants more and more and more. And the thing is that part of us awakens, and when that mixes with our inner child's emotions and needs and wanting to heal but getting hurt again, it creates a freaking tornado of emotions and lust and sensations. And that's why it can feel so out of control. Because, yeah, it creates this big, messy tornado. So, how do we then get out of that? We cannot get out of it through our emotions, first of all. So because our emotions are coming from such a wounded place, that our emotions are not going to drive us out of the relationship. The way that we come out of the toxic relationship is essentially we let it burn. We let it burn. We allow that destructive part of ourselves to end the relationship and save ourselves. And so I know some of you are wondering, well, is there any way to save the relationship? Is there any ways to transform such a toxic relationship into something that's positive? And there's a difference between a toxic relationship and a relationship that has some toxic patterns, okay? So if it's like the way that I described, I don't think there's no way to save the relationship. We have to let it burn. We have to let it burn in order to get out of that relationship and back into a healing space, because the healing does begin once we get ourselves out of the relationship, once we let it burn. And so once we come out of that relationship, that is the time to come into the healing place of acceptance and compassion and to let ourselves feel and recover from it. And it's really important at this point to start to take note and to step it up and be like, okay, I see that this is a toxic relationship and I need to somehow break the pattern, because if we don't come into that place of self-awareness, what can happen is that we again repeat the pattern. We're going to be drawn into another toxic relationship and another until we break the cycle. So that, and I'm sure some of you have noticed that, right? That one toxic relationship just leads to another. So here's how we break the cycle. Number one is get to know yourself. And I don't mean get to know yourself on the surface here. I mean get to know yourself deep down. Get to know that trigger, that emotional trigger that went off that sent you into that toxic relationship. Get to know that. Hold space for that. What is that childhood wound? What is that pattern that's repeating itself? What is the piece that you are trying to heal within yourself? Get to know that on a deep level. Because once you're able to start having self-awareness of that, you can begin to notice and see how it's repeating itself. You can see what relationships will repeat it. Number two is get support from a coach, from a therapist, from a group, somewhere. Get support for this healing journey that you're going through. So that person can really help you start identifying the red flags and help you start making much more compassionate, loving, and healing choices for yourself that are based on compassion and self-love, okay? Because the reason why this is all happening is because you're ready to heal, because you desire to heal, and that healing is possible when you begin to really look at your choices and make radically different choices. Third piece is to break the cycle, is to make room for that dark side of you. Okay, that dark side of you is important. And the purpose of this is that you're not allowing that dark side to take hold of you and take over you. You're able to channel it in ways that are really, really impactful, because this side of you, this dark side that loves chaos and destruction, this side of you is powerful, right? You felt that. You felt that in that relationship. And you want this part of you, this side of you, to be somehow integrated into who you are, and it can. You just don't want to let that part of you take you over. You can channel it. You can channel it into helping you make choices to end certain relationships, to end certain phases in your life, to get out of situations you don't want to be in, but also to channel it into creative projects, to create it into creative expression, to channel it into things that you actually want to manifest within your life. So use that power. It is wonderful. All right, so finally, the final piece in all of this is that I wanted to share with you is to let you know that if this is happening within your life, it is because you're being guided towards real love, towards your soulmate. That this is happening, this piece of you is needing to be healed in order for you to call that person in. And so you are on your way. You are going in the right direction, even though it might feel like you have to go way low before you can come back up again. That's just part of the journey. That's just part of the process. And so continue to have self-acceptance for yourself, self-compassion. Continue to hold space for everything that's going on and all that you're feeling and all the different layers of yourself. And I promise you, it is moving you towards something really, really wonderful and beautiful. All right, thank you.